So we've talked a little bit about what you need equipment-wise to get started. There's a few other things you need to consider before you actually start making marks on your paper. The first of these will be the size of your portrait that you're going to be doing. Things to think about in terms of that relate to the size. Is it going to be a gift for someone? Is it perhaps going to go on somebody's front room wall? Having said that, I do prefer to work large scale because I think you get more detail into the portrait. It depends also whether you're just doing a head and shoulders shot of somebody or whether you need to get in their whole body and their posture as part of what you're trying to say in the portrait. Also cost. If you've got to buy a larger piece of paper, obviously it's going to be more expensive. That in part is what prompted me to start doing miniature portraits, because I found that the cost of large sheets of paper was getting a bit ridiculous when I was entering exhibitions, so I started experimenting with smaller scale, and although it's harder to get the detail into the portrait, there were lots of advantages of working this way as well. These ones are just on chalk pebbles that I found on a beach, so that the grounds for that absolutely cost me nothing. The method of transferring my images onto paper that I prefer is the old-fashioned gridding up method. So once I'd selected a source photograph, I would draw over it a grid. It tends to work out to be about 8 by 10 squares, and then depending on the size I was scaling up to, I'd draw a corresponding grid. Obviously I said I prefer to work larger than life size, so mine tend to be blown up onto a grid. So if these squares were 1/2 inch, I tend to work on inch squares. And enlarge it that way. I prefer this method because I think it gives me a lot more control over the image, particularly when I'm starting getting into multiple images, 2 or 3 photographs that need bringing together. I can just somehow see better how they fit together when I've got a grid to work on. It allows me more leeway in placement. Obviously it's really good if you can have really clear, crisp, in-focus photographs as your reference material. It makes your job so much easier. You can see all the detail you need to be copying on your resource photograph, and it just makes it easy to transfer. In practice, having worked on lots of commissions for people, it's not the type of reference material you tend to get. You tend to get people bringing you snapshots of their holidays, things like that, where they see a photograph of somebody that they like, but the background is, and maybe the setting and other people on the photograph make it so that it's not a picture they would choose to have enlarged on their wall, and they come to me and ask me, can I make that person look like that but in a different setting, say a colour background that will fit into their colour scheme at home. These are the types of portraits I love to work on, because I feel that you are taking something that's not aesthetically wonderful and you're making something out of it that somebody will actually cherish. For instance, this is a picture of my daughter when she was little in her first ever nativity play, and I just love the picture of her. It's just captured everything about how nervous she was, how happy she was to be in the play, but there's no way you'd want that enlarged and on your wall. So I used the photographs, but added my own background just out of my head to make it into something that is more pleasing to look at. And that for me is what the best bit of being a portrait artist, that you can take multiple photographs or one photograph and change things about them and make them into something completely new.